Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is your good fellow Sir Chandler, Chansey, or Chumungus, whichever you prefer. And today we're going to be doing a nice little video on the Sker Ritual lore, but it's simplified. Now, there is a game that comes before Sker Ritual, so actually Sker Ritual is a sequel. Fun fact, little thing, there you go, hello. And this game is made of Sker. Now, I do recommend you listen to this section, but if you don't, here's a timestamp right here if you want to go ahead and skip to the Sker Ritual goodness. But if you do skip, you are going to miss some context, and it's going to make some parts of the story a little confusing. But let's go ahead and hop right into it. Alrighty, Made of Sker picks up in 1898 and takes place in Sker Hotel on the fictional island Sker Island. You play as a person named Thomas Evans who has received a letter from Elizabeth Williams, the hotel owner's daughter, explaining that she is trapped and in need of help. She wants Thomas to write a countersong to an already existing song and bring it to Sker Hotel. Once Thomas arrives, he finds that the hotel is locked and must find a way in, discovering that everyone inside is very abnormal and dangerous. Elizabeth informs him that he must find 4 brass cylinders her father had hid in the property, and if these said cylinders are played on a harmonium, everything will return to normal. As the story progresses, Thomas learns of a cult named the Quiet Ones that occupy the hotel, and also that Elizabeth's mother was the head priestess of this said cult. Also, they learn that the cult had gone insane after attempts and continued plans to harness the powers of a siren that was discovered in a sunken ship near the Sker Hotel. Elizabeth had tried to defeat this plan with hiring Thomas and the 3 other famous composers to write this said previously mentioned countersong to reverse the effects of the siren. Unfortunately for Thomas, this was just a trap set by Elizabeth to trap any and all remaining witnesses or potential evidence. With Thomas dealt with, Elizabeth proceeds on trying to take over Great Britain by using the siren song, with anyone hearing the song going under her control. This cause is also greatly helped by a strange man that offers her both great communication assistance and also a large variety of weapons. As the years go by and Elizabeth continues to experiment and continue splicing of subjects, she eventually runs out of new subjects and has to resort to her own family, including Thomas. And then there's a new character named Arian Wynn. I think that's her name. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I'm just going to go ahead and call her Wynn for the rest of the story to make it a little bit more simplified and so I don't make myself sound like a complete and total idiot. All this splicing eventually leads to Wynn, which was a born product of Elizabeth and Thomas and was made only to be the next purpose of Elizabeth's mother's plans. And Wynn is taught how to sing the siren song from a very young age. However, after a while, she begins to study her mother's plans and begins to make her own. She discovers a main weakness of the song, being that it requires a boost of a radio tower across the island, and if the radio tower falls, so does the song. Armed with this knowledge, Wynn sets out to do her own cloning procedures, using the only test subject that could go against the siren song, Thomas. Alright, the story picks right back up in 1914 after Elizabeth has conquered all Sker Island and is broadcasting the siren song. Wynn limps into an open bunker door and is being chased by Quiet Ones. She then proceeds to operate a console in her laboratory and activates an experimental specimen she's been working on. This is you, the player. After being awoken, you have several flashbacks, including things such as giving a device to an unknown woman, looking at a woman on a pocket watch, watching a ritual, and being captured by a man named Abraham. After the player fully awakens, he realizes he's strapped to a wooden chair and then is confronted by Wynn and her dog Lucky, in which she presents the location of the 3 radio towers across Sker Island. She explains the plans of her mother to send Quiet Ones to stop her and you, and then proceeds to put a sack bag over your head and takes you through a corridor to her laboratory. She also says that not only the Quiet Ones are after her, but the monsters of her mother's many experiments. With this information, the player then proceeds to a revive machine and then is sent to the surface of Lavernock Point. After arriving at Lavernock Point, Wynn directs the player to reach the radio tower's control room in her mother's laboratory and destroy it. She also informs the player that he's been given the assistance of miracles, which gives the player different abilities and skills to help defeat enemies. The player does not know which gods provide these assistances, but doesn't question it. The player then fights from an old church into a village. The player must then destroy electrical fences to proceed, all while being pursued by a mysterious man in a tall hat named Abraham. After searching through a cornfield and reaching a graveyard that led to an underground power plant, a living room, a library, and a morgue, the player finally reaches a red cave with odd symbols on the door. Wynn then tells the player that he must find 4 cylinders to act as the key. After solving several riddles to acquire the keys, this including feeding a furnace entrails, discovering symbols with the use of a light, freeing a trapped lamb and sacrificing it and Quiet Ones, and finally discovering electrical weapons to charge coils and free the final cylinder. After the cylinders are acquired, the player heads back to the underground cave and attempts to place all the 4 cylinders in a pedestal. However, after interacting with the switch on top of the pedestal, Wynn informs that there is no power and they must power a backup generator to continue with the plan. The backup generator contained a blood siphon and required sacrifices to open the door. After generating enough power, the player then has to destroy power coils around a yellow sea that was located below the area that was protecting entrances to the control room of the radio broadcast. After gaining access to the room, Wynn informs the player that the control room is now protected by Abraham, her great uncle, which is nothing but a puppet to her mother. After defeating Abraham, Wynn reveals her mother had a failsafe, just in case something went wrong with her monsters, thus protecting her creations. Not knowing what to do with this information, they destroy the radio tower and then leave through a nearby exit. After emerging from a hidden hole in the wall, you now realize that you're in the abandoned Sker Ritual Hotel. You see a man in a suit and cane interacting with a teleporter before disappearing. Wynn then informs the player that that was her grandfather Isaac and he is heading toward the radio tower of this location. The player must then reactivate the teleportation platform, but it requires refilling, so he grabs a canister to refill with purple gas. After stopping the gas flow in the room and being able to refill the canister, he brings it back to the teleportation room only to find out it's not enough to power it. The player then has to go and scout out other canisters, all while dodging Isaac's attacks, and once they're refilled, he then teleports to a library. Not being able to find an exit to the library, the player reaches for a box, only to be attacked by a group of electrical creatures. After defeating the electrical creatures, the player discovers an electrical weapon inside, and after which the teleporter is reactivated and the player is able to return to the hotel. After returning to the hotel, Wynn informs the player that the machines being used are the creation of Isaac. But unfortunately, with these incredible feats, they were used for dark means. And now the only thing left was to find the position of Isaac, which would then reveal the radio tower. You must then locate a series of punch cards that are scattered across the hotel, and then which are fed to a teleportation navigation system that then provides you the location of Isaac. After completing several objectives and rituals, you head back to the lobby and feed the punch cards to the navigational system. After you defend it from a horde of quiet ones, you are given Isaac's location. Once you arrive at the radio tower, you find many machinery ventilation systems, and in the center of the room is Isaac. You then battle him, and after defeating him, you go to leave on the teleportation pad. However, the pad is intercepted by a strange man with purple eyes and wearing an odd mask. Your destiny is left unknown during the destruction of the radio tower. You wake on the floor of the sewer system of the island. You're surrounded by a type of fleshy substance that's capable of blocking paths, but can be destroyed. Wynn contacts you, happy for your survival, informing you that there was a strange man that had been previously seen talking with her mother on late nights. You manage to escape from the sewers only to emerge to a side train. You then enter the train but are unable to proceed because of a shell protecting a destroyable pod that would allow you to continue. Once you search around, you come across a wooden box sitting on top of a tree stump. After interacting with it, you're attacked by a group of old women with a green aura. After defeating them, you open the wooden box to reveal a flare-type weapon that shoots purple pellets. After using the weapon to destroy the pod, you carry on and see the radio tower in the distance. After reaching the radio tower, you enter the base of it, discovering it is also infested with a fleshy substance. After destroying several pods and clearing out blockages, you come to an interior chamber. What you find is locked with a set of keys required to enter, most likely thanks to the stranger and Wynn's mother. After completing several strange quests, you unlock all the keys and return to the control room. You then unlock the central chamber, but it's quickly revealed that the teleport platform has no container inside the power supply station. Wynn then warns the player that the stranger often plays mind games with his victims. Then, remembering there was a possible container hanging from a corpse on the second level, it's pulled but brings no success. You suspect it's another blood extractor and begin sacrificing quiet ones to it. After a few minutes of sacrificing, it slowly begins to move, and after a while it collapses to the ground, allowing you to collect the canister and operate the teleportation platform. As soon as you go through the teleporter, you find yourself in a surreal world. It's covered in the same fleshy substance on a small floating island in a strange void atmosphere. It's populated by different types of strange bits of furniture, and everything is made of flesh. Wynn then informs the player that none of this is real, but rather a mind game of the stranger, which is far more powerful in this realm. The stranger is then spotted as a giant on the side of the arena. He then summons a giant fleshing monster with yellow bulbs on his body to attack the player. However, the stranger, being as huge as he is easily hit and damaged by weapons. After a while fighting, the stranger finally is defeated, and then Wynn immediately contacts the player, relaying that the stranger is gone and no longer has power over this realm or the radio tower. The player then fights to leave the strange world, only to come back to reality and to find that he never even left the teleportation platform. He then climbs the stairs and leaves the third radio tower as it's destroyed. After reaching the outskirts of Sker Fortress where the main radio tower was located, the player is informed by Wynn that her mother must be located somewhere in this place, which would be the key to stopping all the madness. After heading toward the castle gates and opening one of the side doors, the player is then met with the castle's gatekeeper, a monster towering over them wearing giant metal armor and wielding a big warhammer. The player then easily defeats the monster, and Wynn then states that he is undying and a force to be reckoned with. The player enters the castle only to discover it's protected by an electrical barrier. The player notices a giant metal ball suspended in the middle of the courtyard that seems to center most of the energy. He is able to temporarily shut down the ball and then concludes he must destroy generators as he once before. However, he is again attacked by the gatekeeper seeking revenge after being empowered from the dead. After the gatekeeper is defeated, the generators are all destroyed and the player continues with the plan to search for the mother. After searching the castle for a while, the player stumbles across an ice wall, concluding that this must be the way to the monster that created this whole mess. He begins by searching for oil pots, and using a torch, and also using the gatekeeper's undying green flame to light a conveniently placed battering ram. It's enough to melt/smash through the ice wall. However, once getting past the ice wall, they discover that it's still locked away by a bizarre mechanism. Wynn explains that it requires the heads of specific characters that the player had already previously defeated. After searching through the castle and doing some detective work, the player is attacked by Baylor for a third time. After defeating him again, Wynn then informs the player that she may have found a counter song in her mother's notes. And then making his way into a laboratory, he finds the clones present of Abraham, Isaac, and the stranger. You then must complete a couple puzzles and then come face to face with a clone of Abraham. After defeating him, you acquire a sword. Wynn then informs you that she has found the song and is actively practicing it. You then come across a forge and then have to reset it. After doing so, you come face to face with Isaac's clone. After defeating Isaac, you acquire explosives, after which Wynn informs the player that she has perfected the song and is confident it will break the spell of her mother. After the player arrives back at the forge, he discovers that the explosive material and the sword is not enough and that another metallic material is going to be required to finish the smelting. The player then finds a shining object inside a fallen knight, which then presents a possible solution. He then finds us the exact material he needs and then proceeds to get the proper amount he needs for the recipe. With all the required ingredients, they enact the recipe with the final product being a mighty sword, the Shattered Edge. Finally being prepared for battle, they head toward the lover's chamber and place each of the heads on the according altars. As soon as the first head is placed, Wynn reveals that she's not going to be able to achieve all of it by herself, so instead she requires a person that could get close to her mother to help, that being the player, Thomas, her father. Now that all the heads were placed, the door was finally able to be pried open, allowing access to the chamber. Thomas enters the room to find Elizabeth residing in the center of the chamber, floating on top of an unknown device directly on top of the main radio tower. Thomas engages in combat, finding that it all seems to come to nothing, as Elizabeth continues to concentrate her power, unleashing a new, demified version of Thomas, who now wore a dark, deer-light skull as his helmet. With the player now fighting what was believed to be the fate of the original Thomas at the hands of Elizabeth, the fight was great and their powers near matched each other, but eventually the original Dark Thomas fell, and let out a shockwave, which then vanished the shield around Elizabeth. Elizabeth, not willing to go down without a fight, resummons Thomas as well as an army of quiet ones. However, it's not enough, and after a long, gruesome fight, Elizabeth falls to the ground. Laying at the side of the device, as well as what will be the body of Thomas in his human form, there was a medallion in his chest. At this point, Wynn kneels next to her mother and begins to sing the counter song to end the curse once and for all. At this time, a group of quiet ones storm the chamber, however they're immediately stopped by the counter song. At the end of the counter song, she managed to purge the curse of her mother, and a yellow spirit emerged from Elizabeth's body, returning her back to her human self and dying next to Thomas. They begin to celebrate, however it's cut short after the tower and the chamber begin to explode and fall apart. However, Lucky appears at the entrance and barks for them to be able to recognize where to escape, before they're buried alongside their mother and Thomas and all their horrific endeavors. After escaping from the fortress, they board a railway station and tune into the news to find out they had intervened just in time, as people all across the country were beginning to have headaches and beginning to lose control of their bodies. Wynn gives the player an identification card that belonged to Thomas, and says that even though he is a clone of Thomas, he is now the true Thomas. Thomas stashes it inside of a suitcase, with a couple of books, a pocket watch, and a sack used as a mask. Thomas looks off into the distance and spots a lighthouse, as Wynn says it's time for him and her to start a new life together. With the first 4 maps on launch concluding the primary story of Sker Ritual, it seems the other 2 maps go in completely different directions. And it seems they really don't have much when it comes to lore as far as like collecting notes or pages or anything to really learn much more about it. Thus, I really don't have a lot of information as far as pertaining to these maps. And the only real information I could find is that the House of the Dam is a completely different storyline concerning the Pierce family and what happened to them. And the map Tides of Terror being quoted as defeating vengeful forces who seek to destroy the island. And also I believe this is where the siren was originally found, giving a bit of cool backstory to the main original story. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now that really ends everything that I had to say today. And as always, I hope you enjoyed the video and got something out of it. And also, if you could, it would help a brother out if you hit it with a like and a subscribe. This took a long time to research and a lot of effort went into this. And with all that being said, I'm not perfect, so I may have missed out on something. And if I did, make sure and leave a comment and let a brother know so maybe I can adjust that for something else in the future. Or just frick it, someone else will know that I screwed up. And also, of course, this is the simplified version. There is a far more detailed version of this on the Sker Ritual Wiki. Or, I mean, if you just go deep diving somewhere else, I'm sure you could go digging into the lore a little bit more and get a little bit more. I tried to hit all the highlights. I tried to hit everything important, but there are some more, tiddlywink details in there somewhere that probably some of, like, the ultra fans or someone that really wants to know every single little detail about the story would appreciate to know a little bit more about. And this is where I'll conclude the yap session, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to touch some grass, going to conduct some vitamin D into my body, and of course, ladies and gentlemen, always stay blessed, always stay sunburnt, and have a good day, muchachos. Adios. Hello. Goodbye.